Going to look at the chapter about monopolistic competition. You might think of this as our goal for the day and objective as being to analyze the kinds of firms that you and I are more familiar with, that we interact with more frequently than the types of firms that we've talked about so far. So far we talked about perfect competition, which is a bit of a theoretical thing. We've talked about monopoly, which is really, in my humble opinion, largely a theoretical thing. I gave the example of De Beers and how they're the go-to monopoly cited in textbooks, but their monopoly power has weakened over time. Today, we're going to look at something that is really, like I said, it's the kind of firm we deal with most frequently as households, and it's where the theory, I think, kind of fits a little better reality than those other two more extreme cases that we've analyzed so far. So at this point, I feel like it's a good time to take a little breather and look at these types of firms, the four different types of firms that we're talking about, and to make these distinctions clearer. In my notes, I have a piece that I borrowed from a book that I usually use, and Gregory Mankiw has set up this nice decision tree type of analysis. So I'll repeat that here on our whiteboard. What we're interested in is, first, is the number of firms. And so we can splinter off, based on our answer, in three different directions. We could say many firms, few firms, or one firm. And so let's go over here because that's quite simple. If we're talking about one firm, what are we talking about? We're simply talking about, monopoly. Done. We know if it's one firm, it's monopoly. If we're talking about a few firms, that's the next chapter we have to cover. That's called oligopoly. And that, in my opinion, is a very light chapter. I'll just let you know now. Now, if we're talking about many firms, there's another distinction to make. Now the question is how does he phrase it? The type of product. I'm putting a question mark there because that's the next leg of our decision-making tree in analyzing these things. If it's a differentiated product, if you can tell one, or you feel, consumers really feel like they can tell one company's product from another, then we're talking about today's topic, monopolistic competition. However, as we explored, if you can't tell one company's product from another company's product, if it's indistinguishable, that says indistinguishable, then we're talking about perfect competition. And you might think, oh, that's a lot to remember, but, you know, competition. I think most of us already knew what a monopoly was. If we have what perfect competition is, large number of firms with indistinguishable product, this is its own kind of thing tucked away here. And the real concern here is that this begins to act like this. Then look, you've got the two extremes and the thing in the middle, and the thing in the middle is a blend of the two names. So really, you kind of have one thing to learn if you're getting the main events going on here in between as far as the number of firms or the type of product. So that's just an overview of the four types of firms that we are analyzing, and I think it fits best going through that overview here with monopolistic competition. Now it's also been largely revealed what we're talking about, the characteristics of it. The characteristics of a monopolistic competitor or monopolistic competition are that there are a relatively large number of firms. They have differentiated products, and it's still relatively easy entrance and exit. hence the large number of firms, really. So those are the three characteristics of monopolistic competition. Large number of firms, differentiated products, or at least perceived to be differentiated products, where economists might not like to believe that they're differentiated, but the households who are the consumers of the services or goods, they do believe they're differentiated. And easy entrance and exits. Easy entrance and exit. Those are the characteristics of what we're talking about. And now I go straight in my notes here. I go straight into our model. So I'm going to repeat our model. Just as a way to practice. It's really going to look a lot like the monopoly. Here, it's a single firm, so I'll go ahead and use lowercase q. I'm going to put a $sign up here because this could be price or costs, okay? Each of these firms does face a downward sloping demand curve. As a firm raises its price, it lowers how many units it can sell. So it faces a downward sloping demand curve. Since it faces a downward sloping demand curve, as we had done with monopoly, that means its marginal revenue curve is also trapped inside of demand, steeper sloped, and could go into negative territory. Okay? Now, with this up here, let me try to give you some examples of what we're talking about. Are there a large number of fast food chains? I'd say so. I mean, I could name probably 10 that are national or international chains, and then we could also start to think about local similar vendors, and pretty soon we'd be in a pretty large number of places where you can pull up, either maybe go in or do a drive-through, place an order, and in relatively short time be out of there with something greasy and pretty cheap. I think those are the characteristics of fast food, isn't it? Opening a burger joint isn't that hard, so it's still fairly relatively easy in and easy exit, easy in, easy out. And so each of those firms, McDonald's, Burger King, Dairy Queen, Sonic, Taco Bell, each of those has its own downward sloping demand curve that they face. Now, the characteristics of the monopolistic competitor all lead to one thing that's yet you could call it another characteristic, but it's derived from those other characteristics. If you're McDonald's, you can change your demand. You can change your quantity demand by changing price, but you can change your demand by advertising. And all of those firms whose names you recognized, I'm sure, the reason you recognize those names is because of all the advertising they do. Now, remember with our perfect competitor, I said in that video how there's a company called Baltimore Wire Company or something like that. Right on the side of 295. They don't advertise because their product is so indistinguishable, advertising would do them no good. They just try to make things as cheaply as they can so they can try to get an economic profit. Monopolistic competitors, on the other hand, they face this downward sloping demand curve, and they can increase their demand by taking away from the demand of their competitor. So it's monopolistic in the sense that they have a demand curve and they can affect the price they receive by changing their quantity, but it's competitive in the sense that they actually can advertise and try to increase or decrease their demand. So again, it's kind of a hybrid, and our model is, I think, a good starting point to explore those examples. Now, the other cost curves I've mentioned when we covered the chapter, they're the same. They're the same for all the firms. So average total cost, in my first illustration, I'm going to have it come down and not quite intersect marginal revenue. And come up like this. Oh, I don't like where I did that. No, I don't like that. I missed my mark, because the minimum matters, doesn't it? So let me have it come down and come up like this. There's average total cost. Where am I going to put marginal cost? Here. Now, where's the firm going to produce? Firms always produce where marginal cost equals marginal revenue, here. So that's the level of production of this firm. How is this firm doing? Can you tell? Well, this is how much they're making. Oops, no, that doesn't. I don't mean to draw that at all. Sorry, that's not meaningful to me. This is how much they can charge for what they're making. Here's their cost per unit. So this firm is doing well. They're earning an economic profit, right? That's total revenue minus total cost, which is this rectangle. This up here is economic profit. So there's a monopolistic competitor doing well. But my battery's at 2%, and this video is getting kind of long anyway. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to come back to a firm in a different position, and we'll explore what that means.